This is Biology 210. We're going to be talking about chapters 7 and 8. The skeletal system, chapters 7 and 8 really are a combination of the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. Each chapter deals with one of the two, but we have combined them so that you should be able to learn just the parts that we need you to know at this level, at this point. So the skeletal system, the skeleton is divided into, as we said, axial. And you learned the axial and appendicular back in chapter 1 when we were talking about body regions. And we started out talking about body regions by saying that there were two main regions of the body. And here they are. We have the axial, around which everything is hinged to. And then we also have in green the appendicular skeleton. So our appendages make up the appendicular skeleton. Now this is where we have to get a little bit more technical in terms of what would be considered axial and what would be considered appendicular, because when you're simply looking at a body outside and you see the skin and you don't really see all of the bones, you can look at somebody and say, this is an arm, that's obviously an appendage, or this is their chest, that's obviously their torso. But where we look at the bones, we have to see where do those bones attach to the skeleton, and is the attachment piece part of the axial skeleton, or is it part of the appendicular skeleton? So we're going to divide these two up pretty specifically. There are 80 total bones in your axial skeleton, and in general, we would say that these are the bones of the head, the neck, and your torso. And so, of course, we have the head, the skull bones, we have the neck, and then the torso would include your rib cage, your vertebrae, your sternum, the sacrum, and the coccyx. So those are those bones, and if you add up all of the little individual bones in those parts, you're going to get 80. And it may not look like a whole lot, but when you consider all of the small bones in the skull, when you count all of the individual ribs, all of the individual vertebrae, that's where that 80 comes from. And then we have the appendicular skeleton. So here are our appendages that are attached to the axial skeleton. So we might think, looking at a body that is covered with skin, that the shoulder is part of the axial region. But the shoulders, where we have the clavicle and then we have the scapula, which is known as our shoulder bone, they are actually appendicular. They are actually attached to the axial skeleton. You can see that from behind here. And the same thing happens in the hip area, is that our hip bones are actually attached to the axial skeleton. So from the hip bones all the way down, we would consider these appendicular. The appendicular skeleton has 126 bones. That's a huge number of bones. And when we're looking at this picture, we don't see that many bones. We see a humerus, we see 2 bones in the forearm, a very large bone in the thigh, a couple of bones down here. Where in the world is that 126 number coming from? And it's because when we count all of the individual bones in the wrist, the hand, the fingers, and in the ankle and the foot, that's where the number begins to start increasing, because we've got tiny, tiny bones that are down here. So if you add all of those numbers up, that's where your 126 comes from. So we add those together, and total number of bones in the body is going to be 206.